We are going to see Fabiano Caruana fighting off against Wesley. So Fabiano Caruana has 10 minutes on the clock. Wesley has only 7. But it is Fabiano in a must-win situation, and he opens with d4.
So the biggest question is, where will Fabiano Caruana deviate? He was deep in preparation in the previous game between these two, and wow, it's Wesley who deviates. Now it's the Queen's Gambit declined. I was thinking, okay, Wesley got a good solid position out of the first game. He managed to draw quite impressively with black, but now he switched it up, Judith.
But I think he's more of a player who likes to surprise the opponent. Obviously, it's not a surprise because Fabiano had to be prepared for this. I'm also on that side that I rather switch. I mean,
especially in speed chess.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm prepared, I know that opening, I would rather switch the game.
And this is topical stuff, of course. The Queen's Gambit declined appeared in the recent World Championship match. It's entered a lot of top players' repertoires just recently because black is really flexible. Move order doesn't matter so much. You will survive the opening. Jovanka, you're an expert on this line yourself as black.
Sometimes is my answer. Sometimes I play this very well, sometimes I get tricked. And there we see Wesley initiating exchanges very early on. This is one of black's approaches in order to release the light squared bishop. So general rule of thumb is that bishop on c8 can get out or has a roll, then black is doing okay.
If not, then black suffers. This black bishop is the key. Can he get it out? And right now there's a lot of tension in the center. This black knight looks nice and strong, but white is ready to eliminate that piece with the bishop and drop back with the white knight. I think Fabiano, he's planted his rooks on these central squares because he will want to open things up given the opportunity for white. But very tense right now. Wesley has one move before any action happens. How best to use it? And he backs up his knight.
So knight e5 will be on the board, I guess.
Yeah.
And then f3, e4 in the later stage.
Yeah, very shortly. Maybe it will happen in the next few moves. And Wesley brings his bishop out first of all. Okay, so at least getting ready to trade off some pieces if white does start stepping forward in the center.
Well, now also knight e2 makes a lot of sense, I think, with the threat of f3. If you want to save the knight, or playing immediately f3. That's also quite energetic.
He goes for the immediate f3, forcing a trade here. And now the question is, do you take black's bishop with your own bishop, or do you take back the black knight, which is the most important minor piece? He takes the knight. And now white is immediately ready to recapture, and stepping forward in the center, it's going to happen in the next move or two. Wesley needs to brace for impact.
Yes, and the key thing for Wesley is that once that pawn marches to e4, that Wesley does not relinquish the tension in the center. Instead, he maintains it for as long as possible.
Judith, who would you take here?
Well, I would probably rather take it with white, trying from this side, from that side, playing knight e5, if knight d7, maybe I go knight g4. I don't mind to end up knight on f2 supporting e4.
Rook e2.
He's going a different way of supporting his e-pawn push, and Wesley plays copycat. When in doubt, copy the opponent, and all the rooks stacked up on the e-file now.
But maybe he's going to go now knight f2. From the other side.
So
oh, wow.
c4.
c4. Good move. I like it.
Good move, but now it makes the e-pawn push maybe slightly more difficult. He's going from a different angle, as you say there. Fabiano and Wesley. Okay, b6. So tense. That's the way to do it in Armageddon in must-win situations. Keep the tension. Try step forward if you can. And talking of stepping forward, Fabi immediately c5, locking down the queen side now.
Yeah, because after c5, maybe a4 will be the next move, and keeping the tension on the queen side, and then maybe regrouping his rook from e1 to c1, and suddenly there is a new target on c6.
Yeah. Prediction game on point, Judith, and yeah, big target. Actually, white is the one in charge. White holds the key on the queen side. Black doesn't want to touch anything because black will be left stranded with weaknesses. It's like a minority attack here that white is going for on the queen side.
Yeah. But it seems like Wesley is completely unfazed because he just simply steps forward his rook, defends the c6 pawn, and at the right time maybe even has active ideas on the king side. And that's like daydreaming though.
Yes, definitely possible. The only problem here for white, for Fabiano, is that he has to pace it. He has to avoid rushing because this pawn is vulnerable. And
Wow, look at
Ivanka.
G5.
Yeah, but g5 is just to take away the square from the white knight.
Are you sure it doesn't want to go G4 eventually?
Give it some
Eventually.
time.
Yeah.
watch out for the black king moving, maybe a rook sliding to g8, and then g4 being pushed a bit later on.
Now
Ivanka,
for
impressive.
white, I can imagine a great square for the knight on f5.
Oof. The problem with these types of knight maneuvers, they take 4 moves to get
Well,
there.
knight f1, knight h1, g3, f5, and then right there.
It goes the other way. That would have been beautiful with the knight coming back to f2, h1, g3, and f5.
I'm not saying it's a very speedy knight and I would have the time for it, but just for the imagination.
Maybe someday. It's definitely on Fabi's radar. And up to this point, both players playing quickly. The same time difference between them, 3 minutes to start, was the time deficit for Wesley, and still it's 3 minutes 7 now versus 4.
But after the knight went to b4, now already g4 makes much more sense for black. But maybe knight b4 is kind of a provocation also. But of course, Wesley, it's not so easy to provoke him.
He just protects his queen. So, I mean, the good news about that is that at least black's knight on f6 can be released from defensive duties. And I like this move from Wesley, just shifting the queen to the e line, keeping an eye on e3.
Yeah, weak pawn here. That's the root of all kind of troubles here for Fabi. Can he hold that pawn while going for his own action? Queen d2, just maneuvering now. What do you think? Will we see Wesley switch pace? Will he switch things up and go for the attack eventually with g4? Or is he just going to curl up into a ball?
But I wasn't sure this was
Oops.
possible. Ah,
Oops, a5,
yes.
knight
a
c4. Okay.
He's got a square. Black's got a terrible pawn structure now with a backward pawn on c6.
Maybe
but
rook c. No, rook c5. Knight a4, knight d5. Queen moves away. Okay.
it gets sharp. Rook c5 you want before the black knight comes in and locks up that c-file.
Finally e4 in the game.
But this is a sacrifice. What are his
wanted to
tactics
go
there?
A5.
Oh wow, and look at this, a double question mark move. A blunder there from Wesley So. He must have missed this one.
Because
a5.
knight c4 is not possible anymore. He has to go back and then d5 will be, I guess. And
And he was banking on this move, e3, but the white queen is simply going to step away no matter where she goes. She has to keep an eye on this white knight. There we go. She retreats to e1. d5 is going to be a hammer blow next move due to the pin, as you mentioned, on the c-file. We saw that double question mark move. Huge blunder.
and the problem is for black that after knight d7, d5, it's not only the c6 pawn which is under attack, but the e3 is going to be falling off as well because there's no good place for the rook to move away.
Yeah, black's position is collapsing. It's just like that Gukesh game. It's just pass pawns. Just throw your pawns forward. And the opponent is struggling to deal with them.
But Gukesh is a pass pawn guy. I mean, he has so many pass pawns all the time.
But it just
Fabi's learning.
it does highlight the cruelness of chess, though, because I think Wesley played a great game, but then he made one terrible blunder, and that's it. His position fell apart.
Well, that's how it can turn out to be, unfortunately.
Great spot from Fabi there, though, to play e4 to tempt Wesley into grabbing a pawn.
Wow.
Wow, piece sacrifice from Wesley So, deciding that retreating, allowing white forward was not an option. And now the material count is knight for 2 pawns. Black has a strong e3 pawn, but it won't survive too long.
You feel like even moves like d5 will put the boot in.
That's a very Fabi type of move. He'll calculate, simplify the equation, trade off more pieces, trade off more pawns. A passive player like me would be inclined to just retreat, hold the d4 pawn, and try to round up black's pass pawn on e3. I think at this point, several strong moves for white.
Yeah, but still, the technique is very important. How you convert an advantage when you have.
I like your idea best, actually. You know, it's safer, and if 5 minutes, there's still some trouble left. Oh no, he goes for my move. Oh, and
Looks good though.
knight takes pawn. And the problem for black is that they can't slide over the rook to c6 because the knight will come to e7 and give a deadly check.
Yeah, rook c6, knight e7 is not one to blunder. But how to save this pawn? It
And
doesn't look
after
possible.
queen c5, white can take on e3, and after f5, the king just moves out to h1.
Yeah.
But maybe not.
Maybe f1 the white king will hide on just to make sure everything is
Yes,
protected.
everything is protected.
Yeah, now running with the B pawn, but it doesn't look quick enough. That black B pawn is not going to run too much further. He's so close now. If he wins this game, Fabi, then Hikaru Nakamura must not lose, otherwise he will win the tournament. Okay, knight takes e3. This line you're mentioning, Judah, on point here, but White's king simply steps out of the pin.
As you pointed out, let's protect everything.
Curl up into a ball, all of White's pieces, nicely coordinated. Now the white knight is free to move. Do you rush with that? Do you move the white queen?
At the same time, if you move away with your knight, then queen c4 or queen b5, tying you up a little bit.
Yeah, this is a nasty pin. Still a bit annoying. White's knight now not ideally placed.
Yeah, at the same time, you can release the tension with knight b2, queen d2 and queen d3. And then everything on exchange mode.
Yeah, I'm just wondering where the black queen should pin from. Yeah, this pawn will get to b3, but no further. White's knight will blockade. And there we go, he does pin. I think you're right, Judah, just some order. Knight b2, queen d2, and White's still in control. But the evaluation bar is not 100% convinced, despite White's extra knight here. Do you think there are any swindling chances?
Well, there is some idea to play maybe after b3, move away with the rook to c6 and try to get into c2.
There's always hope, as long as the clocks are ticking. Fabi slightly nervous there, but he does develop his queen. Now the white knight is coming.
King e1 on the board. Threaten rook takes rook.
And a mistake apparently there. Why could that be a mistake? Wow, what a move from Wesley So, dropping back, threatening checkmate in one move. He threatens to come into g1, but a red cross shows a missed opportunity. Maybe there was even stronger there. Maybe there was a way to equalize the game.
Isn't rook takes rook still very much a possibility?
It needs to be calculated. Rook takes rook leads potentially to simplifications. I think that's the move he wants to play, Fabi.
And Fabi just under 3.5 minutes, whereas Wesley has less than 2 minutes on the clock. And remember, the players are not getting any increment until they've passed move 40. And even then, the increment is only 1 second.
Yeah, we're at move 40 now, so they will be gaining 1 second per move. First, Fabi's calculating whether he can take this rook without allowing any nasty checks from behind. Queen to g1 check, for example. If he thinks that's safe, which it might well be, the white king can start running. Then he will go for it.
I think he's not going rook e6. He has to go back.
King back to f1. Yep, sometimes you got to go
rook
back.
e3, for example, that cannot be played because that would be a blunder. And he goes rook e6.
He's a calculating machine. Fabi, he spent a long time there trying to work out whether this was viable, and it turns out it is. If black checks.
Of course, because I forgot that we are not exchanging the queens. Knight f2. And that's whole of a different story. Then, of course, queen check, or the queen is very badly placed on g2.
Black queen almost trapped. It takes 2 or 3 moves to come back to
Queen d7 maybe is the best.
Black's pawn's dropping off.
Yeah. The pawn on b3's life is charmed. The question is, do you hold on to the h2 pawn? My vibe is yes. Put it on h3 and let that knight be the supreme defender.
Yeah, you can tell Wesley's slightly nervous, slightly fidgety here. His clock is ticking down. He's at 1.5 minutes now. Yeah, I think Fabi's going to move his queen. h3 also sophisticated, but feels like a finesse too far. You can give some checks. You can step forward, go pawn hunting for white. Okay, Fabi down to 2 minutes. Surely he's going to win this one now, as long as he keeps 1 pawn alive.
Look at that.
H3
h3 on the
he
board.
He keeps 2 pawns alive. Everything protected.
I like the fact that he's making my moves.
The black queen trying to come out now, but Fabi, with a bunch of checks, will be able to start grabbing pawns.
Because black cannot go all the way to e6 pawn, because now it's not pinned, the f2 knight, so knight e4 will be on the board. This is the big issue for black.
So he's going to zigzag over, and he can start maybe even by grabbing this b3 pawn.
I think he's just grabbing the e6, and after b2, queen f6, and grabs the other one.
But he can actually go queen b8 and bank everything on the b3 pawn.
But then queen f6, queen g6, queen h6, queen g5. So
Got it right.
Everything
It's
is
on the
going to
board.
be collected.
And it's really accurate, the move order here. As you say, Jude, all these pawns are going to drop off with check. Here we go. First, the h6 pawn will drop with a check. Next, the g5 pawn will most likely drop with a check as well.
Well, he has to go king f7, I believe, but
The good news for white is you have a safety net here. The white knight can always come across and block this black b pawn. Should be enough now. The extra material, white will have passed pawns of his own to start pushing. Black's king being chased away.
And he can't step forward. Oh, it's bad news for Wesley on every level.
yeah, his time is getting low.
I think we might not even fight on too much longer here, Wesley, so he knows this is hopeless, especially against someone so accurate, someone so precise like Fabiano.
But they don't give up so easily.
I think he'll give up now. Either black will have to trade queens or give up the b3 pawn.
Oof, a run forward, but Fabiano delivering all of the correct checks.
Queen e6 check?
E6, yeah, like you say, Ivanka,
No,
nowhere to keep the
queen
queens on.
c4.
Here it comes.
He wants the g5 pawn first. He wants everything. Greedy Fabiano. Efficient though. Another black pawn drops with a check, and now the black king being chased in circles. The white knight's going to join the action very shortly. First another check.
What a
and
good technique.
There we go. Handshake. Fabiano takes the win.
Well done.
An important 1.5 points for Fabiano Caruana, and Wesley so walks away with 1 point. But what an impressive Armageddon game from Fabi. Incredible stuff, the way that he set up that trick, and then his technique at the end was just pristine.
Yeah, that was a very nice way of doing it. But it also means that he understands the position very well. He knew that what kind of nuances existing in this kind of position, because actually e4 having the pin on the c file and playing the e5 is not so original. It is part of this type of positions, right? So it's important that you can see on his play, Fabiano knows so well all the ins and outs of the middle game of the positions what he's playing.